sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to AZ Ledge 101. This is level 2, so we'll go a little bit more in depth than we did a couple weeks ago. First, we'll just review everything from the last presentation, and then we'll go more in detail. So just as a review, remember the legislature is made up of two chambers, the Arizona House and the Arizona Senate. There are 60 members in the House and 30 members in the Senate. That's one senator and two representatives from each of the 30 legislative districts. They're elected to serve a 2-year term. There are 2 regular sessions that begin the second Monday of January that last relatively 100 days, and it ends when a majority of the members in each chamber vote to adjourn, sine die. Special sessions can be called by the governor or by 2/3 of the members of each chamber. House leadership consists of the Speaker, Rusty Bowers, Speaker Pro Tem, Travis Grantham, Majority Whip, Leo Biasucci, and Majority Leader Ben Toma. Senate leadership consists of President Karen Fann, President Pro Tem Vince Leach, Majority Whip Sonny Borelli, and Majority Leader Rick Gray. The House and Senate are made up of several standing committees that are assigned or created for various topics. So in the House, we have Appropriations, Commerce, Criminal Justice Reform, Education, Government and Elections, Health and Human Services, Judiciary, Land, Ag and Rural Affairs, Military Affairs and Public Safety, Natural Resources, Energy and Water, Transportation, Ways and Means, and then Rules. And likewise in the Senate, we have Appropriations, Commerce, Education, Finance, Government, Health and Human Services, Judiciary, Natural Resources, Energy and Water, Transportation and Technology, and Rules. As a general rule, each of these committees will meet once a week throughout a regular session. And so this is the general layout of kind of the bill to law process in Arizona. We start out as an idea, then a bill is introduced, it's first read and assigned to a committee. It's then heard in a committee and then goes to the Rules Committee, to caucus, and then one of 3, either COW, Committee of the Whole, COW consent, or third read consent. And then it goes to third read to get a formal vote. And then it will transfer over to the other chamber to start all over again to be first read and assigned to a committee, go to a committee, go to Rules, caucus, COW consent, or third read consent, third read, and if it passes that second chamber, then it goes up to the governor, who can either sign or veto. Okay, so now we'll go a little bit more in depth for each of these steps. So first is the idea. And so this can be brought to a lawmaker by an industry, business interest, a lobbyist, agency, constituent, or it can be an idea of their own. And they'll begin meeting with that lawmaker and potentially staff at the legislature and ledge council to start turning that idea into actual bill language. And so this will take some research going into the affected titles that they're trying to amend and work that into an actual bill. Once the bill language is finalized and the sponsor is happy with it and the stakeholders are happy with it as well, the sponsor can seek co-sponsors so they can bring the bill folder to those other legislators and ask them to sign on. After they've obtained the co-sponsors that they want, they can submit that bill folder to the chief clerk in the House or the secretary in the Senate by dropping it in what's called the hopper. And then the bill is formally introduced. It's given a bill number. It's made available online at the azledge.gov website. And so now the idea is officially a bill. So this is what a bill looks like. So you can see at the top is what's called the short title. And you can see the bill number right there in the middle. And then over at the sponsors, the first name listed on the bill under introduced by, Following that sponsor is the list of co-sponsors, and then below it are a list of affected titles. And so you can see that some existing statute is being amended, where it says amending sections 112, 116, 121, and then there are cases in which new statute is created entirely, and you can see that where it says by adding sections 116, 123, and 16, 127. And this is what the bill language looks like. So you can see here on the image, 16.121.01 is existing statute. So all of that black lowercase text is existing law. The blue and uppercase text is language that's being added to statute. And then you can see language that's being removed from current law is in red and strike through. There are some deadlines for bill introduction, and so specifically as it relates to the House, beginning at least for this session, these dates will change each year. After Thursday, January 13th at 5 p.m., each of the House members was limited to introducing 7 additional bills. Prior to this deadline, they can introduce as many bills as they want, but after this deadline, they can only introduce 7 additional bills. And then they had a hard deadline, a bill introduction deadline on Monday, February 7th. So after that, members could not introduce new bills. Over in the Senate, there's no 7-bill limit that goes into effect. So each senator can introduce as many bills as they want up until the bill introduction deadline, which this year was Monday, January 31st. And just so you can see where all of this is, we'll go to the AZ Ledge website. Let me just make sure you can see. So here on the AZ Ledge website, you can go under the tab that says Bills and click Bill Info. And as bills are introduced, you can see them listed here under House Bills. And you can open up these tabs and click on any bill to read the bill text. And it's also important to note, although these are bill introduction deadlines, as with many rules in the legislature, that deadline can be waived by a motion on the floor for the late introduction of a new bill. Okay, so after a bill is introduced, the first step in the process is for it to be first read on the House floor, the Senate floor. This is done by a reader who reads the bill number and the short title that we looked at earlier. And at this point, the reader will read the bill number and short title, and the speaker in the House or the president in the Senate will assign it to a committee or to committees. And it's really the sole authority of the speaker and the president to decide which bills get first read, when they get first read, and to which committee or committees the bill is assigned. We'll just take a look at what this process looks like. This video is from last year, so everybody is still wearing a mask.
First reading of bills.
First reading of bills, HB 2013 interlocal licenses,
Transportation,
HB 2013 elections, hands count,
government elections,
HB 2051 procurement information,
government elections,
HB 2050 homeowners association,
government elections,
HB 2054 voter registry database.
So as you can see, the reader is reading off the bill number and short title, and then the speaker will assign it to a committee. And then there is a requirement in the Constitution that each bill be read 3 times on 3 separate days. And so after the first read, the bill will get a second read kind of any time between the first read and when it actually goes to the floor for a vote. And so we'll just take a look at that process.
second reading of bills,
Second reading of bills, HB 2007 autonomous vehicles, HB 2010 adoption health information, HB 2011 school buildings, HB 2015 appropriations preschool, HB 2016 child care assistance.
So as you can see, the reader is just reading off a long list of bills to be second read on the floor. Okay, so if a bill has been first read and assigned to a committee, that committee chair and all of the committee chairs are appointed by the Speaker in the House and the President in the Senate. They have the ability to place it on an agenda for one of their committee hearings. They don't have to, so they can essentially kill a bill by never placing it on an agenda and giving it a hearing. In committee, this is when legislators will debate bills, they'll hear testimony from the public, and they can amend the bill. In order to pass out of committee, a majority of the members must vote for it, and there are a few possible outcomes after a bill is heard in committee. It can receive a do pass recommendation, which is if the bill was not amended and it passes out of committee, it gets a do pass. The second outcome is that if it was amended, it can get a do pass as amended recommendation. It can be held or it can fail. A bill could be held because they don't have the votes. Perhaps they want an amendment that wasn't ready for that week's committee hearing, and so it will be delayed until a further or a later committee hearing. And then this is when RTS is utilized. And so when you go to sign in on bills, it'll show up for the members while they're in committee. They can see who supports or opposes the bill. So we'll take a look at a committee hearing for one of the bills this year, HB 2492.
We're gonna hear it one way or another.
Mr. Chair and members, House Bill 2492 requires the addition of proof of location of residence, the date and place of birth, and a mark in the yes box next to the question regarding citizenship to the presumption that a person is properly registered to vote. The bill additionally outlines further requirements related to citizenship verification and registering to vote. And Mr. Chair, there is one amendment.
Please.
The Hoffman Amendment dated 2/15/22 at 9:46 a.m. specifies that to be qualified to register to vote, a resident must provide satisfactory evidence of citizenship as prescribed in statute. The amendment additionally outlines requirements related to federal-only voters and Attorney General investigations related to such. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Questions? Sponsor?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll give some brief back.
So as you can see here, each bill begins with the committee staff coming up and explaining the bill to the members. There's then an opportunity for members to ask the research staff questions about the bill, and then the sponsor of the bill will have an opportunity to speak to it, and then members can ask the sponsor any questions. After that is when public testimony is taken. So those who are signed in for or against the bill can come up and speak and take and answer any questions.
I'll keep it brief. So in 2000,
Representative.
friendly judge that 1,600 voters in the state of Arizona without documentary that.
The Hoffman Amendment to HB 2492 be adopted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. The ayes Peter have it.
Okay, and so what you're about to see here is the chair of the committee will move the bill, and then they'll actually take a vote. And at this point, members have the opportunity to explain their vote.
The vote so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, I move that HB 2492 as amended receive a due pass recommendation.
Final discussion. Call the roll.
Representative Bolding,
No.
Representative Burgess.
Aye.
Representative Carroll,
Aye.
Representative
1,600 voters in the state of Arizona without documentary proof of citizenship. This bill is very, very simple. This, quite honestly, the decision comes down to whether or not you want to ensure that only legal citizens are casting ballots in our elections. I vote yes.
Aye.
Chairman Kavanaugh.
Aye. Members, by your order, 7 ayes, 6 nays, 0 present, 0 absent. You have given House Bill 2492 a due pass recommendation. HCR 2025.
So then you can see at the end, the chair will call the vote, mentioning whether or not the bill passed or failed. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind with committees. There are deadlines. So the agenda for an upcoming committee meeting has to be posted by 5 p.m. 5 days prior to the committee, unless it's a special meeting. And then here for this session are the deadlines for bills to be heard in committee. So Friday, February 18th was the last day for House bills to be heard in House committees and Senate bills to be heard in Senate committees. Friday, March 25th was the last day is the last day to hear House bills in Senate committees and for Senate bills to be heard in House committees. So as we went over that process where a bill goes through committee and then rules and caucus, Cal, third read, and then is transmitted over to the other chamber, there are deadlines. So that first chamber, it has to be out of committee by Friday, February 18th. And then when it's transferred over to the other chamber, they have until March 25th to have it heard in a committee in that chamber. It would be dead if it doesn't get to a committee by those dates. But of course, as with everything, there are ways to get around the rules. Most people have probably heard of a strike everything amendment. So an individual could use a bill that is kind of a vehicle and strike their bill onto a completely different bill to get around that deadline. And this is what a committee agenda looks like. And these are posted weekly, so you can see which bills are being heard in which committees. You can also access the amendments that are going to be heard in committee by going under the Documents tab in the bill. And this is what an amendment looks like. So it's referenced to the introduced bill. So you can see it, it says on page 1, between lines 1 and 2, insert. So it'll be inserting text. You'll see in other areas where it'll say on, page 2, line 25, strike, a specific word or line to remove language from the bill as introduced. And then another important aspect is also under that Documents tab, you can access the fact sheets that are produced by Senate and House research staff to get a general overview of what the bill will do. So we'll take a look at where you can find this information. Again, you can search a bill by looking up the number. And so here's the overview of the bill that shows you the progress of where it is in the process. And this is the Documents tab. And so you can see the bill. You can click the introduced version to see the bill text as introduced. Under miscellaneous documents is where you can find those fact sheets. So in the House, they're called House summaries. In the Senate, they're called fact sheets. And then here's where you can see proposed amendments. So in committee, this was the proposed amendment that we just looked at. And then you can see proposed floor amendments because it was further amended when it got to the floor. And you can see which amendments have been adopted here under the Adopted Amendments tab. Okay, so once a bill passes out of committee, as we saw on that flow chart, it then has to go to the Rules Committee. The Rules Chair has to place it on an agenda for it to be heard. They don't have to do that. They can kind of essentially kill a bill by never placing it on an agenda. Rules is not really a policy committee to debate the policy of a bill. It's more for the rules attorney to advise the members whether or not the bill is constitutional and in proper form. So this is kind of a check to make sure the bill is written correctly and an opportunity to discuss whether or not it's constitutional, and there's no public testimony. So we'll take a look at a bill in Rules Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 2492 adds several proof of citizenship related requirements for voter registration. In doing so, we believe that the bill likely presents a preemption issue with the National Voter Registration Act, as well as a conflict with fairly recent U.S. Supreme Court case law. Specifically, the U.S. Supreme Court in 2013 considered whether an Arizona law that required voter registration officials to reject any application for registration, including on the federal form that is prescribed by the National Voter Registration Act, if it was preempted, if the form was not accompanied by a documentary proof of citizenship. And one of the key facts here is that the federal form does not require documentary evidence or proof of citizenship. Instead, it has a question box on that form that just requires under a risk of perjury, that you are a U.S. citizen. In concluding that the National Voter Registration Act preempted Arizona's law in that situation, the court considered that the Act's purpose is to ensure a simple way for people to register to vote, despite, the states themselves are allowed to create their own registration requirements for state elections, but for those federal offices, the purpose was to increase voter registration. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the rules attorney?
I'd like to hear what, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear what Mr. DeGrazia has to say.
Motion, Mario,
Mr. DeGrazia.
Mr. Chairman, the court was proof of
yeah, that's good. Okay. Thank you. I got to elections.
with some in particular circumstances.
Questions? Secretary, please call.
Okay, so after the bill is discussed in rules, the vice chair of the Rules Committee will move the bill and then they'll take a vote.
Call the roll.
Representative Abraham?
Nay.
Representative Biasucci?
Aye.
Representative Bowers? Representative DeGrazia?
Nay.
Representative Toma?
Aye.
Representative, Vice Chair Griffin?
Aye.
Representative Bowers?
Chairman, I'll vote aye for now, but I have real questions about that. Thank you.
Chairman Grantham?
I'm going to just say a couple of words. I find it extremely troubling that we have voter laws, we have local control of our elections, we fight for local control of our elections, yet when there's an overreach by the federal government, we're willing to accept it as, well, they're allowed to preempt us because of this, and this court says this. I strongly reject that notion, and I think this is a fight worth having. I may lose. I'm sure if this bill advances through the process, it will get there, and I vote aye. 5 ayes, 2 noes, 1 not voting. You've given House Bill 2492 a due pass. Vice Chair, please.
Okay, so that bill was one of the more controversial ones to go through the Rules Committee. Oftentimes, they will just move all of the bills that are on an agenda, which could be, upwards of 100 bills, in one mass motion because the rules attorney and the members on the committee believe that the bill is constitutional in proper form. We definitely disagree with the rules attorney analysis on this specific bill, HB 2492, and believe it's constitutional and believe that there was a misinterpretation by the rules attorney. But as you can see, just like in any other committee, they will go around and take a vote on the bills, and it just takes a simple majority to pass out of the Rules Committee. Following rules, a bill will go to caucus, and this is a more informal meeting between all of the members of one party in a specific chamber. So you have a House Republican caucus, a Senate Republican caucus, you have a House Democrat caucus, and a Senate Democrat caucus. And they're not voting on the bills in caucus, they're just kind of debating them and gauging caucus support before it moves to the floor.
Mr. Whip and members, as amended by the Government and Elections Committee, House Bill 2492 requires the addition of proof of location of residence, the date and place of birth, and a mark in the yes box next to the question regarding citizenship to the presumption that a person is properly registered to vote. The bill additionally outlines further requirements related to citizenship verification and registering to vote. I would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Representative Kavanaugh? Oh, look at him leaving. Representative.
Okay, so in caucus, just like in a committee, the research staff will come up and explain the bill, and then the sponsor has an opportunity to also give their explanation of the bill, and members can ask questions if they have any issues with the bill. After caucus, there are 3 possible calendars that a bill can be placed on that the speaker and the president get to decide which bills go on which calendars. And so those 3 are COW, which is Committee of the Whole, COW consent or third read consent. COW is like one of those standing committees that we've already watched, except it's made up of the entire body, and no public testimony is given. So in COW, just like in committee, lawmakers will debate the bills, and at that point they can offer any amendments and they can choose whether or not they want to adopt those amendments. A bill is passed out of COW by a simple voice vote. And so the chair will say, all those in favor say aye, all those opposed say nay. The only exception to that is if one of the members yells out division before the chair of committee of the whole calls the vote, then the chair will have all of those who support the bill stand, and they'll count the number of members standing. And then they will do the same for those who are opposed and count how many are opposed. And then if a simple majority is in support, then it will pass out of COW. So this is what COW looks like.
To introduce my mentee, Frank Bejar. He
Oops.
The fact remaining is that the underlining bill does absolutely nothing to encourage Arizonans to participate in democracy and to get involved. And here at the state legislature, we've seen over 100 bills attacking voter rights, and this just goes to add, again, in those long lines.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Leader Bolding.
Okay. He only took one question, so is that it?
Well, thank you, Mr.
So what you can see here is a Democrat member, Sierra, asking the Democrat Minority Leader Bolding a question during Committee of the Whole about the bill. And so they'll continue on doing that until the bill is moved and a voice vote is taken. So we'll try and scan to that timestamp and watch it get voted on.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
You're welcome, sir. All right, members, the question before you is House Bill 2492 as amended. Receive a due pass. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Appears the ayes have it, do have it, so ordered.
And just like that, the bill is passed out of Committee of the Whole. Okay, so the second calendar that a bill can go on after caucus is called COW consent. This is for bills that have been amended in committee, and it can be used to bypass the debate that we just watched that occurs during a typical Committee of the Whole. Any lawmaker can object to a bill being placed on a COW consent calendar, and it will be placed on a regular COW calendar so that it can be debated. All of the bills on a COW consent calendar are moved together with their amendments in one mass motion. So like we saw at the end with HB 2494, when the bill was moved and then a voice vote was taken, that happens just with several bills at the same time together with their amendments. The third option is for bills that were not amended in committee. These can be placed on a third read consent calendar, bypassing COW to take it directly to a third read vote. Just like the COW consent calendar from earlier, any lawmaker can object to a bill that's placed on a third read consent calendar, and it will be placed on a COW calendar for debate. So that brings us to third read. Again, like we said, the Constitution requires that a bill be read 3 times on 3 different days. And third read is when a bill is formally voted on. And so the reader will read the bill, and then it will go up on the board, and members can press the yes or no button, green or red, to vote for or against the bill. And the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House decide which bills go up for third read. No debate occurs during third read, but each lawmaker is entitled to explain their vote. For most bills to pass, it takes just a simple majority, which is 31 members in the House and 16 in the Senate, with few exceptions. An emergency clause, which I imagine everybody is very well familiar with now, that takes 2/3 majority, so that's 40 in the House and 20 in the Senate. Likewise, for a Prop 108, which is any tax increase, that also takes a 2/3 majority. And then lastly, Prop 105, which is the Voter Protection Act. So anytime lawmakers are amending statute that's voter protected because it was passed by a ballot initiative, it takes a 3/4 majority and must further the purpose. So that's 45 members in the House and 23 members in the Senate. So we'll watch third read of House Bill 2492.
To the Senate, House Bill 2492.
House Bill 2492, amending Section 16.101, adding Section 16.1 for the ARS relating to qualification and registration of electors.
For the third reading of House Bill 2492, vote at the bell.
Okay, so you can see that the reader read the bill, and then the board was opened up. So you'll see these names change from this neutral color to green if they're voting yes, or red if they're voting no.
Kaiser votes aye. Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I rise to explain my vote.
Please proceed.
So as I mentioned earlier, members can explain their vote during third read, and so that's what's taking place here. I'll see if I can skip to the end when the vote is called.
You're not voting, you passed House Bill 2492, sign in open session.
So the Speaker Pro Tem at this in this video is calling the vote, saying that by your vote of 31 ayes, I believe it's 27 nays, you have passed House Bill 2492. And now, if you remember from the flow chart of how a bill becomes a law, once it passes out of that first house, it's then transmitted over to the second chamber. So this was a House bill, so it was transmitted over to the Senate. If it were a Senate bill, it would be transmitted over to the House. And it starts the process all over again at first read in that new chamber. So HB 2492 was transmitted to the Senate, at which point the Senate president had the opportunity to first read and assign it to a committee, and she did, and it was assigned to Senate Judiciary. It then went to the Senate Judiciary Committee after it was placed on an agenda. It passed out of that committee, and so then it goes to Senate Rules and then Senate Caucus. And then it can, in the Senate, can go to, again, Committee of the Whole, CAL consent, or third read consent, and then it must be third read. Now, if the bill is third read in that second chamber and that chamber did not amend the bill, then and it passes, it goes directly to the governor for signature. However, if that chamber amended the bill, it has to go back to the chamber of origin. So in other words, if HB 2492 is amended in the Senate and passes, it has to go back to the House for a final vote because both chambers have to vote on the exact same language. However, if HB 2492 is amended in the Senate and it gets back to the House and the sponsor disagrees with the amendment, it's then sent to a conference committee so it can be further amended. And then that takes us to conference committee, as I just mentioned. So if the sponsor of the bill disagrees with how it was amended in that second chamber, it can be sent to a conference committee that's made up of a few members from each chamber, and they attempt to come to an agreement on the language. If they do come to an agreement, then it will go back to both chambers for a final vote in each, so they can vote on the new language. But if they can't reach an agreement, then the bill would die. And so that takes us to the governor. After a bill has been passed out of both chambers, it's transmitted to the governor to be signed into law. Most bills become effective on the general effective date, which is 90 days after the legislature adjourns, sine die, except that bills that the governor signs with an emergency measure become law immediately. And then also some bills have a delayed or retroactive effective date. And then if the governor vetoes a bill, the legislature does have the opportunity to override that veto. For most bills, this takes a 2/3 majority vote in both chambers, with the exception being a tax increase, which has that Prop 108 2/3 majority requirement. To override a veto of that, they need a 3/4 majority in both chambers. The other outcome is that if the governor does nothing within 5 days of the bill being transmitted to his office, the bill becomes law. And just to go back over and review kind of the session deadlines that we talked about, so we can see that session started Monday, January 10th, the second Monday of January. That Thursday was the 7-bill introduction limit for House members. You can see some bill request deadlines, but the important one is January 31st, which was the introduction deadline for Senate bills. Over in the House, we can see that Friday, February 4th, was the deadline for House members to request bills. And then the following Monday, February 7th, was the introduction deadline for House bills. Friday, February 18th, was the last day for Senate bills to be heard in Senate committees and House bills to be heard in House committees, which took us to crossover week. And then March 25th is the last day for House bills to be heard in Senate committees and Senate bills to be heard in House committees. And then we can see a deadline for those conference committees with the bill that's amended is Friday, April 15th. And then they've marked the 100th day of session, which is April 19th. Again, session doesn't end formally until both chambers vote to adjourn sine die. And so that takes us all the way back to this flow chart that we started with at the beginning of the meeting. Just as a refresher, the bill starts as an idea. It's turned into bill language, and then it's introduced as a bill, and it's given a bill number and has sponsors and co-sponsors. The Speaker or President may first read the bill and assign it to a committee or to committees. And then the chair of that committee may place it on a committee agenda. And if he or she does, then it goes for a formal hearing where it's debated and amendments are adopted. If it passes out of committee, it goes to the Rules Committee as a check to make sure the bill is drafted properly and is constitutional. After rules, it may be placed on a caucus calendar for members of each caucus to gauge support for the bill and discuss it amongst themselves. Then it can either go to a COW, Committee of the Whole, COW consent, or third read consent calendar. And if it passes out of there, then it goes for a third read vote. And after that, it's transmitted to the other chamber to start the process all over again from the first step of first read. And if it makes it all the way through that second chamber, then it goes to the governor, where it can be signed into law or vetoed. And so that is level 2 of how a bill becomes a law, or AZ Leg 101. And we'll see you in a few weeks to dive even deeper.